Welcome back, beautiful people. This is another episode of An Untold Narrative where we host creators from around the world. And today's guest is from around the world, from a very small town in Italy. We host Joe Amoruso of the Paper Plane Workshop, which is an incredibly secretive, James Bond-esque footwear design development house that has worked with amazing partners and brands over the years. And Joe, we've known each other for a few years now. We haven't spoken in
Yeah.
a couple. I'm stoked for you to be on the podcast and just catch up and share a little bit more, because if you Google your brand, your kind of agency, not much comes up, dude. So I'm excited for you to hopefully share a little bit.
I'm looking forward to it. And I might actually steal that tagline in the beginning, the James Bond studio, for my website. That sounds cool. Makes us sound even more secretive.
But it's the truth, right? Like you guys do have like an Instagram page, obviously, where you share things,
Yeah.
final products that have come out. But like even your website is like info coming soon, and it's like I don't know how people get in touch with you. I don't know, like it's
Well, that's because we actually have the website in works now, a new website with a bit more information. But it's always been, since the beginning, my idea was that when I started, it was a one-man studio, and I've always had this thing of it. I knew that I wanted it to be a big team and whatever, like a group of designers. But in the beginning, it was just me. So I had to create this concept of my face not being the studio, my name not being the studio. It was a workshop. I used to write emails in the beginning saying us and we, and it was just me. Um, and then straight away, very quickly, I started to add people. And um, so, yeah, that's why we have this like input of being very secretive.
Wait, I have to acknowledge the fact that even as a one-man show, you were using us and we. I swear to God, I put up a LinkedIn post at least once every 6 months of like, if people use the word I in their emails less and started using we more,
Right.
they'd have more successful business. I swear to God.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I've always thought that way. And I think that was the reason why I opened the studio, was that I never wanted to be a freelancer. I wanted it to be a design studio. And I actually opened the company. I left the company that I was working with to open something where I had a we and it wasn't just an I. So I wanted the team. And yeah, that's the reason. It's funny.
So today we're gonna fast forward a little bit. You now have 9 or 10 full-time employees?
No, we have 10 in Italy and we have 3 in China, plus a development center, which is a partner. So we're a partner factory with a development team. And there's another 12 people there.
Holy cow. Okay, so you have really escalated the one solo band to a
Yeah.
full orchestra. What is
Yeah.
what to give people context of like how many years was it? Like the first year it was just you, then it was like 5 people, then it was like 10. We just spoke a little bit offline of you just hiring another designer to and adding them to your team.
Yeah.
Like what does the process of growth look like for you, and like is that the fun part? Is it giving people job and cool work really really enjoyable for you, or is it like then you have the off times where you potentially have to lay people off or fire or like so there's a lot to cover in there, but like what
Luckily, touch wood, we haven't had that yet. So,
okay.
um, when when I started, as I said, it was a we straight away. I wanted it to be a team. I think I had an intern, a girl come in as an intern, literally like 3 months after I'd opened. I probably even less than that actually, through a friend. And she didn't want to be in footwear. She wanted to do something completely different, but she was doing a design course, so it made sense to start. And she's still here now. So 8 years later, I managed to keep her in. Then it was 3 of us, right? Then I hired another guy who came from architecture, because we're in a small town. I had to find people that were interested in the industry or interested in what I was trying to do, but weren't specifically from the footwear industry. And it was 3 people for a very long time, like three years, which is not a long time, but it felt like a very long time. And everything that we were doing, like just we were doing so much just as 3 people. And then we had our ups, and it looked like we were shooting off to the stars straight away. And then we had a crazy fall. where we almost lost everything. Like we were very close to just throwing it all in. And luckily, a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, and then we built it up, and we've grown triple figures for the last 3 years. So,
Wow.
yeah, and that means hiring people. That means building facilities and networking more and adding people in. And right now, we have a very diverse team of designers, graphic designers, production managers, all different areas are being managed and followed. And then we have people in China and our team in Italy.
Wow. Okay. So total from start to finish or start to today
eight
is what,
years.
8 years. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's really amazing. And now you've covered not only just local production in Italy, but you have overseas,
yeah,
contacts and developments. And you mentioned the almost losing it all, which is the stories that everybody says and they share a little bit of. But what was the deciding factor to keep going? Right? Like what does that look like? Does that mean you're like barely have enough money for pasta or like what is that
yeah.
what does that
That's
mean?
how close. So, funny story on that is that it got to a point where we literally, like, as the three of us, we were like looking at each other like, I don't know if I have money to get to the end of the day, the end of the week. It was very, very tough. Um, and that unfortunately was due to, let's say, bad decisions made business wise in terms of customers, trusting customers that didn't pay. Unfortunately, I've met a lot of, let's say, bad businessmen over the years. People that have not paid, not have followed through on what they had committed to. Um, and it took us very, very deep, like very low. And we weren't financially backed by anybody. I'd put all my savings into the company, and we started eating through company savings, my savings, then employee savings. And it got very, very, like, very close. But there was never a moment of saying, let's give up. I think that's why we never did, because nobody ever said, okay. It was almost a fact of thinking anything else that we do will not make us happy. And we were happy in doing what we did, although we were suffering. So it was just like, okay, just let's keep going. And I do remember a moment, and it was during COVID. That it was the year before COVID. So you can imagine the year before COVID, we were at our lowest point. Then COVID hit, so that was like impossible to get. It couldn't get any worse than that.
Right.
Everything was stopped. All production was stopped. We got to the lowest point, and I remember I got an email from a client, from a guy wanting to make shoes. Like I get every single day, I get DMs from so many different people, like crazy people, like especially from America, like crazy businessmen that want to make their new brand, or just people randomly. And I remember making the decision to. Until then, I'd kind of started, because I said we were going off on this like really good path. And I became a business snob in the sense that I was like, oh, the project isn't good. Show me a business plan. How many pairs? I started rejecting people, which has never been my thing. I just kind of fell into that mindset. And I remember taking that order that was like 300 pairs, but it wasn't an order yet. It was an idea of this guy, this kid. And I remember accepting that order and thinking, okay, let's start again from something very small and stop going. At that time, we were working with very big clients, but nothing was coming through. So we fell into this terrible situation of working really hard, but just nothing was coming. And I started again from the independents, and one order, then one order, and then one order, and it just started going back again. And I think our enthusiasm grew back, and it's momentum. You just create that momentum of doing more and reconnecting with people and being less negative. And yeah, but it's
Wow.
been a journey.
What I have to ask, out of all that, why do you think those two other people stuck through with you? Like, what is it if you have you had that conversation with them like one on one of like, hey,
Yeah,
we've gone through some shit, like, and you said like she wasn't supposed to work in footwear or fashion or and then she's still here. Like, what
yeah.
is it about those people that have you thought about like what makes people stay so true to a brand or to their work? Or, is there like one or two, three things that like stick out for you?
I don't know specifically. I mean, I do know we've spoken about it. They're probably the people to ask, but from what I've felt over these years is that I've always tried to be as transparent as I can with everything that we're doing, money wise, business wise, my choices, my ideas, and I've tried to include them as much as possible. And they feel as it's their company, and it is their company. I'm just managing it, and it's just that's what we try to do over the time. So making people feel like they're part of something, and not just make them feel, but make them also make decisions that make it happen. And yeah, it's been like crazy. Like the dedication they had over those years was just wild. And I feel very lucky to have had that, even though that now it's now coming to a stage where you know that you're growing, and getting everybody on board in the same way has been also like tough, but I've been lucky that everybody that we've hired, I always try to have just good people first. I don't really care if they've been designers for Yeezy or what. I don't like, it's not, it doesn't really matter for me. I want people that are good people that have dedication, and I've been lucky until now to have that. I mean, we haven't had to fire one person. We haven't had anybody leave. So it's been a great journey until now. I've been very lucky.
Wow. That's a, for a place that you can barely Google and find out anything, it sounds like you have some rock stars on the team and the group.
Yeah.
Um, I I want to specifically talk about, I mentioned this to you before we started recording. The reason why like you re-popped into my head was actually recently saw one of your very few Instagram posts where you posted about work with Municipal, which is the Mark Wahlberg brand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy cow! Like you can't Google this company and understand what work they do, and then all of a sudden they just drop a heater working with like a massive celebrity in a brand that like it's hard to ignore. Like they've done a great
Yeah.
job advertising it, putting it on people, doing the right things, and then I see it come across your guys' page, and I'm like, clearly they're doing something right, and so. I guess I'm less interested in the project itself, but more of like if somebody is building an independent brand or an independent kind of studio and they want really good clients, right? Like how do you think that happens? Like it's like obviously it takes a whether it's a chain effect or a network effect or whatever it is, but like what do you think is like the most specific key element to like building good clients, long-term clients, high visibility clients? Like, is there something that you could share with everybody?
Um, yeah, I mean that project is crazy in itself, just how it started. I mean, just to give you context, and I posted about this a year ago without, of course, unveiling who the client was, but we got connected with this project through a partner. Um, and the project was literally Mark has a documentary that he's releasing in 6 weeks, and he
Oh,
wants to
cool.
tell the world he's doing footwear. And he had it in his mind. He's like, I want to do footwear for this brand, and but it's in 6 weeks the shooting of the film, and we didn't even have a design, like nothing. And in 6 weeks, we went from zero to a whole full set of physical samples with outsole toolings, molds, everything in his hand, um, for this shooting. And that was like, and it was during just after COVID, so it was like a year after where you still couldn't travel to Asia, and our business partners over there in Asia were great, and we were just doing everything through WeChat and confirming, and that was just crazy in itself. So I would say, going back to your question, we've never been attracted by high profile brands ever. I've never wanted to work with the big brands because I don't feel that what we bring to the table is helpful for those type of structures. We always want to get involved from the beginning to the end, so from design to production, for many reasons, and we love the startup phase for brands. And I think what has got us to where we are is, I think all the companies, all the brands that we've worked with until now have felt that kind of dedication that we have, and that's probably one of the reasons why we had that drop in the beginning. I'm not the numbers guy. I'm not here looking at numbers and profit. I get too dedicated into the project. I love it so much that we end up giving much more than we should be giving. But that's part of the, if we can't do that, then that's when we kind of separate from the brand. And we've had brands in the past, like huge brands that have come to us, ask for contracts, and you've done just like your contract work, and you don't even get to see the sample, or you don't even get to the second stage, or you can't make a decision. And it just doesn't, it's not for me. So until now, I think we've worked with so many different startups that our network, the people that have known us, they can say probably 1,000 bad things about us, but the good thing that they'll say is that we're dedicated, and we will do whatever we can to get them over that first hurdle, which is the startup phase. And I think that's where we really make a difference. Like in that first, the network we have, the people, just the way we work is, that's how we got to these projects, is like, it gets around, the word gets around. And now we don't look for clients anymore. Everybody comes to us. And we try to only work with good people. That's like our first
That's
mantra.
wow, what a story. Thank you for sharing. The headline of this is going to include the word dedication for sure.
Yeah.
Wh- I am you mentioned 0 to 6 weeks and turning things around. That obviously encompasses dedication. What does that work like from a physical perspective of like, hour by hour, day by day, teamwork? Like, are you guys just in a room for 7 straight days, pulling all-nighters, designing and developing tech packs? Like, what does that look like from a physical perspective?
Yeah, it's nonstop. It's like just nonstop. Although we do have a concept, and in Italy we have it more than maybe. We try to keep some kind of balance. So we don't pull the all-nighters, but we do work really hard when we're here, and that's enough, and that's what helps. And then of course, yeah, I'm constantly in the morning, in the evening, available to all different parts of the world, and I take that on my side as a kind of, but it's just working hard, like very hard when we have to work hard, and being very concrete. We don't fly around the world with like creative, crazy ideas that nothing can be done. We try to be very focused. And I think that helps again by not having the typical fashion student come in. They don't have all of that progressed, like crazy brainstorming that goes on for a month, that unfortunately in some aspects doesn't bring results. Whereas we have people that are here, they want to make a great product, they love the product that they're making, and they try to make it as good as possible quickly. So that's how it works with us. It's like very direct, straightforward, and we have that development mindset, because we know we're going to have to develop it, and then we know we're going to have to produce it. So it's very different to just being a designer.
I can fully relate with that as a creative, but also working for a startup where, we'll have clients that, we want to launch production sneakers, a full production run in 4 to 5 months, and you don't have a
Yeah.
design. And it's like, okay, well, when you're designing, you have to think about how you're going to be making it, because there's no time for that in between phase, right? And
Yeah.
I actually think there's something really powerful about that. I wish um, that more designers and creatives actually took that approach, spent more time in a factory, understood how things were made. I do think there's a 4 year gap of COVID where people weren't inside factories, and therefore a lot of brands are actually seeing the down effects of that amongst their workforce and
Yeah.
their employees. But not their fault. They just weren't sending people, to your point, flying around the world, going to factories. Now,
No.
I finally heard people are going back to Asia, which is nice to hear. But it's it's kind of this crazy time, and luckily for you, being in Italy, you can, I don't know, walk down the street to an Italian shop that makes
Well,
shoes.
we can't, because we're out of that complete footwear area, but that is exactly, it's my, like, from belief from the beginning. I grew up that way. I don't have any schooling in design or footwear, so I learned how to do shoes literally in a factory in China, and that's how I learned to do it. And I see so many designers and so many companies recently I was talking with a company, huge apparel company, American company, and they literally, the product team literally doesn't go to China to see the production or development, and I was just shocked and amazed because I'm there every month, which is almost too much, but I'm there every month because it's how I like to do things. But yeah, that moment of being in factories, knowing how something is made, should be it should be the starting point of when you create a product, because you're doing something industrial. Otherwise, you're an artist, and I love that part, and that's inspirational, and it's beautiful, and we need more of those people. But it's not the same thing that we're doing, and it's two different things. I mean, like you when you're at Vibram, yours was functional, and you had to do something that made sense production-wise and performance-wise, and that has nothing to do with mood boards and brainstormings and like it's something concrete.
It's so funny. One of my first bosses there always made really big jokes. Me out of college, I was always like, "Oh, let's put together mood boards and stuff." Like he's like, "Fuck mood boards. I don't understand them."
Yeah, I mean that's a bit extreme, but yeah, that's true. It's hard. It's balancing the two different sides, because you don't want to get too focused on just the functional part and industrial side. Because I always had this mindset, especially like spending so much time in China. There's this moment, and that's the reason why I've always come back to Italy. And there's been moments where I thought, oh, I could just live there. I might as well just live there with the amount of time I'm staying there. But it's keeping your mind divided between consumer and factory, and helping the factory as much as you can for what they need, but at the same time trying to give something more to the consumer. And that might sometimes challenge the factory, or vice versa. So there's some times where we have to step back on product because we need to help the factory industrialize something quicker, make it faster, make it better, cheaper. And there's sometimes we're just like, we don't care. Let's keep going, pushing the factory to tears, basically, until it gets done. But yeah, I have to keep myself divided.
Joe, we talked about Mark Wahlberg launching a documentary, but I think you need a documentary on like what you're
No.
building. Like if you're flying back and forth, like even once a quarter, building these beautiful projects with these amazing people and these awesome clients, like and we talked about it just briefly, but like you don't have a massive social presence, and like I feel like so many people would love to see that and be so inspired by it, but maybe that would actually take away from the craft and the work itself, and maybe that helps you keep this focus of balance between your life and the work life, and kind of creating this beautiful synergy versus focusing on pleasing other people, for example, as one aspect of it. I don't know, like what
Yeah,
you just don't have the social presence, but it's so fascinating talking to you for 23 minutes now.
it's always just been a thing of not wanting to be the front man. And also the other thing is, like, I'm very, very, I wouldn't say unfocused, but it's like I can be swayed very quickly into I love different genres, I love different tastes, I love different things. And I'm attracted to different things all the time. So it's always been like I think my main focus was being, okay, let's just not be out there too much so I can exercise different things, and try different things. And also, again, for me, it's the paper plane workshop, it's the PPW, and whoever's under the PPW now, tomorrow, before, in the next 10 years, I hope, that's the PPW. And that's the reason why we don't have the designers' faces on our website. It's why we don't publicize. And unfortunately, that is something that then goes against the team. I can imagine. I mean, it's something that team members would love, but it's also the way the team's built is that each customer has their focus designer, so their key designer, their key account, and every project has their own. So if one project is going better than the other, it's not that designer's success. It's everybody else is making that guy or that girl do better because they're taking off focus on other things, so that person can focus on that. So it's never been a question of one designer focusing on something else. It's like a focus on the whole project.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's like our, since the beginning, it's been our thing of just a teamwork. It's not a
It
single work.
and I assume that up front when you bring people on, like you have that conversation of like it sounds like you're just like, hey, leave your ego at the door. This is
Yeah,
a
that's it, pretty much.
and a team, and like I know everybody wants like to be in the magazines and put their work out there and stuff like that, but what we do is really critical and important, and the way we have success is that everybody works for each other versus being a silo and kind of this individual kind of putting out work by themselves.
Yeah, and the ego thing is always interesting. It's always an interesting conversation because we all have huge egos. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this job. Then the fact that we're capable of accepting somebody else's is different. If we didn't have egos, if you didn't have an ego, if I didn't have an ego, we would be able to put ourselves out there so much. So everybody has an ego, and our customers, some of them have huge egos, and of course, that's the best part is. So we always have to not leave it at the door, but it's understanding like we're here as one. There's one focus only, is the PPW, and how do we get that forward, and how do we make it better? And we're always trying to figure out a way of doing good in some way, like doing good product, working with good people. There's that whole sustainability area that's difficult, and we're trying to do whatever we can. So it's like all these different areas that we're focusing on, apart from promoting ourselves and being out there and doing interviews. I mean, it's great to do them. We whenever we get the chance, but it's the best thing is getting out there for PPW. That's what we're focused on.
That's really remarkable. So I gotta ask, like, speaking of ego, like you as the kind of spear tip of the PPW going forward, literally the tip of the paper plane. How, like, do you have goals and ambitions of like, have you ever thought about scale and like, what does that look like in the future? Like you started off as one, as three, as five, as 10, as 15, now global. Like, what is it? Do you think a year in advance, or do you just kind of take them as they come and you kind of just try to keep up with the work as it rises?
No, we have a plan in place, of course, and I always think 18 to 24 months in ahead, not too far because things change very quickly in our industry. Um, but we have always had a plan, and from since day one, my idea was that the paper plane workshop, and that's why it has a very vague name. Again, it's like not focused on footwear or anything. Is that it would become a hub for brands and for brand building, specifically on footwear. But then again, we like to do apparel, we like to do accessories. I mean, we've even done video games. So it's like we like to expand, and that's where I have to sometimes step back and stop. But we always move around. So that's like the objective is to become a full brand hub where we do have from product creation to selling the product. So e-commerce, marketing. We're not there yet to that second stage. We've just had the entrance of a business partner a few months ago who came in to help us get there, structure to get there. So that's kind of part of the plan. But we want to build a content studio. We have started that initially internally. We have a guy who's actually my brother, who's been with us since he was 13. It was illegal, of
Oh my
course, but he was
God.
studying. He was studying and schooling, and he's been. I mean, since he was young, he's always seen me do things. And he did our first office photos when he was like 13. And now he's e-commerce and content manager for some of the brands that we work with. Um, we have a graphic part of the team. So we're building that studio slowly. It's difficult, of course, because where we make a difference now is on the product creation and product production. But I do want it to become a 360 degrees hub for startups. And then the startup can then get to a point and go off and do whatever they
Sure.
have to do. But that's where we have the most fun. And I think that's where we can bring the most at a lower impact in terms of cost, because we have a lot of experience in the industry. We know how to cut corners in development, in time, in speed, and we know how to make things quicker. And we've done a lot of different shoes, so we can help a lot of different people, and that's where you meet the most. I mean, the best people is at the beginning. Later on,
Right.
we all get confused with other ideas.
if anybody's listening, then there's a lot of maybe freelancers or people who work for corporations, but then they want to go off and try to do their own thing. What are a couple things of people? It sounds like you guys are profitable and things are going really well. And I don't want to, like, obviously there's a ton of turmoil and things that happen, and like it's not always rainbows and butterflies, but like, are there a couple keys for you to share with anybody thinking of doing this for themselves or to build a team and do their own studio? Like, what are a couple ways that you found success to make sure that the lights stay on and that you can, enjoy life and,
Right.
be profitable as a studio? Because it's so competitive these days, man. I mean, the footwear industry is in a really weird place. There are more creatives going off trying to do their own thing. Some are finding success, some are not, and then they go back.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you see that as well. But like, clearly you figured something out. And so what, without giving away your secrets, but like, what are a couple things that you think have allowed you to be successful?
It's difficult because everybody's different, but I would say for me, it's always been, again, and I go back to this very simple concept of looking for good people to work with as your team members. First thing. Second thing, good people in terms of clients. And the minute you see red flags, step away as fast as you can, because you know that red flag is just going to develop into something bigger. And that's the two key things that we have now after 8 years. It's really just like my focus point. And every time I haven't listened to that feeling, I've made a mistake every single time. Like, and now, for example, like you always know that you should have listened to yourself. You're in that situation, and then the idea is, how do I limit the damage? Because you know that you're in that. And good people and good is different to everybody. Like someone that's good for you is different to someone that's good for me. It's like different, but that was what the first thing. The second thing is, and unfortunately, it's a kind of against your question, but there is way too many freelancers out there right now, like just way too many. And it's something that I feel strongly about, not because I'm against freelancers, but I do think that the process of working for a company, for a brand, then for a studio should be the natural process before you just come out of college. And because yes, you can be a great creative and you can be very good at social media and getting yourself out there, but there's a whole like ecosystem in working in a company, things that you learn, things that are very useful later on for a client. And I'm constantly just seeing all these freelancers pop up everywhere. And it's just like, okay, cool, great. But what does the freelancer do after they've done your tech pack? How far can they go? What network do they have? And we get constantly contacted by freelancers who are coming to us to help them with their client. And it's just like, kind of, no. I mean, it's easy. And then, so it's difficult. It's very difficult on that thing. And for me, most of all, it's just like, learn more. Like, don't rush into doing. I understand that working from home is cool and being free and being able to travel the world is amazing. And I don't take that away from anybody. But there's a lot of work that goes into this, and having a team and making sure that there is food on the table for everybody. And there's no secrets to it. It's just a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of experience. I've been doing this for 17 years, almost 18, and I've made a lot of fuck ups, like unbelievable amount of fuck ups. And I always say, and I learned this from my first boss, was lose as much money as you can with other people's money, because when it's your own, it's gonna really hurt. And at that time, I was losing his money by the mistakes I was making. But he was very honest, and he always said, just make sure you make up for it in any way you can, just never economically, but it was always a question of just respecting that loss. Because and you don't have that when you're a freelancer, because you're just kind of this abstract component to the team, but you're not really like financially on board with that brand or financial. It's just very like random.
No,
But yeah.
Joe, I appreciate you kind of pinpointing on this subject because this is a conversation nobody wants to have. And
Right.
I'm happy to have it. Because again, it's an observation that I've been watching and seeing and you know, navigating, of like people. I feel like I get a DM once a week of like, hey, do you guys have any design work? I'm a freelancer, blah blah blah, and it's like, or like, hey, I'm a freelancer, but I'll come intern for you guys, and it's like, I like, it's just, it doesn't. And then the fact that I like what you said of like they'll come to you because they don't know how to make the sample or do any development, but then their
Yeah.
client's asking, and they probably weren't even clear in their contract negotiation of like, okay,
Right.
yeah, you're getting paid 5 grand to design, but like, oh, they're expecting something different, and so they
Correct.
thought they got a bargain, but they don't realize that designing and developing a full shoe probably you should have charged like 20 plus grand for because it's a fuck ton of
Right.
work.
Exactly. And there's a lot of things that are involved. And again, I mean, if you have experience, like you've been in the industry for 10, 20 years, you've worked with some cool brands, and you've got that experience, and that's amazing. And those are key people that have decided in their career path to not be under an umbrella of the big corporations. And that I understand. Or they don't have the bandwidth to build a studio because it takes a lot of energy from you to build a studio. I mean, I don't design anything anymore. I don't touch any design at all. My job is literally now just doing podcasts and interviews. But I know it's like, but it's all about like just managing customers and answering phone calls and like stuff like that. So it's some people don't have that bandwidth, or they like to be in their own. They like to manage their own thing. I never had that from the beginning, so I wouldn't have that now. Um, but yeah, there's just way too many. And as I said recently, for this addition that we had, this girl that we just hired, um, the the amount of freelancers that applied for the job and wanted to do it as a freelancer. So they didn't want to come to the studio, and it was just like, be a freelancer then. Don't apply to jobs, but as a freelancer. It's like wanting to work from home. And I get it. I understand that you don't want to move to some seaside town where life is amazing. You don't have to take a train to work, and it's sunshine, and you're on the beach. And but I understand that you want to stay in Milan, but if you don't want to stay there and you want to come here, then that's better.
Yeah, we spoke briefly about it, but like you posted a junior position in design, and you said you got over 400 something applications,
Yeah.
which is again for a studio that's very hard to find online, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. And as I said, it grew over the years. I remember like the first time I did my first, it was like 50 people. And actually, going back to that, it's funny. Going back to that hire in the beginning, and she probably won't be happy about this. Like, but it's when I had this girl Julia, who's in our studio. She was doing her internship, and I just put out an application to hire a girl for a designer at the time. So this graphic designer came to the studio. She worked with us for a month, and literally I had an intern, and then this new girl that was there for a month trying out, doing a trial for. And at the end of it, I had to decide if I was going to hire this girl that was doing the interview. Not I hadn't like considered and she hadn't either considered the situation of hiring this intern. And the reason why I hired the intern was she was good at doing her job. Like they were both very good, but it was very stupid, and it might sound crazy, but there was the trash that had to be thrown out, and she went over, she picked it up, and she threw it out, and she wasn't an employee. It was like just a natural feeling of this is my space already, and that for me was responsibility, and so like now when I do my interviews, I try to look for that sense of responsibility, the sense of like wanting to be part of something. And over the years, we've had 50 people apply. Then it was 100 people apply. And now we have people that apply that said, I missed the application last year and I want to apply now, which is kind of crazy because like, and people are from all over the world, like really Mexico, US, I mean, everywhere. Last year we hired a girl from Denmark, and this year an Italian girl that was working in Spain. So we're also like starting to go out of our comfort zone and local. I mean, although I try to bring in as much local people as I can, but it's also good to bring people from outside.
Joe, this has been awesome. I'm so happy we got reconnected and you came back on and shared a couple of insights. If there's we're gonna wrap up here in a second. If there's one thing that out of all of your stories and experiences and brands that you've worked with and things that you figured out along the way, like is there one key thing that you always go back to, like one piece of advice that somebody has told you over the years or one thing that you've been thinking about lately that like keeps pushing you forward? Because you know, it sounds like you work a lot, but you found this amazing balance between, work and life and, what you want to do. You don't seem too stressed out, which is amazing. And so maybe that's the seaside town in Italy. I don't know. But like
I don't have
everywhere,
much hair left, so I don't show it well physically, but I
the
definitely
same,
mentally
same,
I can say I'm.
same brother. Um, but like what's one thing that like you always go to, or like somebody listening who's trying to find peace or happiness or contentness or, just purpose? I think you've provided your employees purpose and meaning. And like, what's something like a piece of advice that you could always give to those people who are trying to find that?
It's very basic. I try to treat people and things the way I'd want to be treated, and every time I do something, I just look at that, and that's the only thing. I don't care about rules or like all of that stuff. It's just really just try to do something. Like when I find myself in difficult positions, you're gonna put you're always gonna make a mistake, but try to do it as if you were on the other side. And that's really, I mean, that's what I did when we were at the bottom with the two guys. I just tried to be how I was, and that's how I try to do it with customers when I know that either I fucked up because we make a mistake, and it happens all the time, or when they fuck up and I'm on the other side and I try to get closer to them and be like, okay, if I was on their side, what would I? And it doesn't always happen the other way around, unfortunately, but that's basic for me. That's like the main thing. Um, so it helps to surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, and it's yeah, you're right. It's very basic and elementary, but like treat others how you want to be treated is pretty simple, but it's a very good guiding light
Yeah.
forward. So I think that's a tremendous way to wrap up. Joe, where if if somebody wanted to get in touch, how do they get in touch with you?
Uh, Instagram, the underscore PPW. I answer still all the I'm still managing that. And then definitely my email info at the middle score ppw.com.
Perfect.
And
Well,
those are the two places I answer still all of that. And we'll have a new website soon uploaded with information once our team has completed it. But
exciting stuff, dude. I can't wait to see the progression and continued growth for you and the team around you. So thanks for sharing these amazing stories today. This has been a lot of fun.
no, thank you. It's been great. It's been good to share it.